It should come as no surprise that the man who ginned up baseless voter fraud conspiracies, even after he won in 2016, but lost the popular vote by more than 2 million, is at it again. This time trying to delegitimize the 2020 election in its entirety. Trump spent the weekend with a combination of golfing and tweeting about how he, quote, won this election by a lot with his 71 million so-called legal votes, which he pointed out was the most ever for a sitting president. And while that very last part actually is true, the fact is Joe Biden got more votes than anyone ever. And yes, they're legal, too. Still, Trump has, of course, refused to concede the race, and as many lawsuits play out, he and his team are reportedly planning to hold rallies in the coming days to spread his baseless claims of voter fraud and coronavirus, no doubt, and to stoke outrage among his base. But how far might he really go to try to hold on to his power? How many more beyond Defense Secretary Esper might be fired in the process? How many pardoned? And how many money-making deals will be hatched before all is said and done? I'm joined now by someone with unique insight into the possibilities, the president's niece, Mary Trump, a clinical psychologist who analyzes her uncle's mental health, behaviors, and history in her book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. Mary Trump, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Has your uncle refused to concede because he actually thinks he won or because he just simply can't accept losing?
Initially, it's always because he can't accept the bad news, and a loss is certainly the worst kind of news somebody like Donald could get. But he has shown himself expert at actually gaslighting himself, so there may come a time when he starts to believe his own lies.
You know, I'm going to quote you to you, if I may, from your book, Fred, as in your grandfather and Donald Trump's father. Fred's fundamental beliefs about how the world worked. In life, there can be only one winner. Everybody else is a loser, and kindness is weakness. Those were clear. Is that what this is all about?
Everything with Donald goes back to his father, my grandfather. He was a cruel man. And he had incredibly high standards when it came to his children fulfilling his own expectations. So Donald knows better than anybody that the worst thing you could be in my grandfather's eyes was a loser. And he has been shown to be that on many occasions. However, this is the first time in his life there hasn't been somebody to help spin it or to help bail him out of it.
You know, that's what comes clearest to me, is that at 73 or 74, whatever he is, he's never experienced this before. You either litigate your way out, you buy your way out a la Stormy Daniels, or you lie your way out. Thinking back to his time with Roy Cohn, when they were the losers in that housing discrimination lawsuit discriminating against black would-be renters, where they lost the case. They went out to the steps of the courthouse and relentlessly said, we won, and never admitted otherwise.
That's right. And that has been a pattern for a very long time. And that won't change now. However, if the system holds, there will be no escaping it. The problem we face right now, though, is will the system hold?
Is Donald Trump suffering in your estimation?
Very much. Again, he's in a unique position for him. And my guess is that he is both enraged and terrified. But because he can't admit the fear to himself, because that's also a form of weakness, his rage is just going to become all-consuming.
Do you want him to suffer? I mean, you say in your book, you wrote this because of the damage he's done to the country, your family, obviously the cruelty that was done to your father, Donald Trump's oldest brother, by both Trump and your grandfather. Do you want Donald Trump to suffer?
Of course not. I don't want anybody to suffer, although honestly in the last 4 years, a lot of us have been hard-pressed not to engage in those kinds of feelings, as we've watched the cruelty exhibited by this administration, as we've watched our institutions and norms disintegrate. But of course, I don't want him to suffer. I do, however, want him to be held accountable.
When you say, of course, I hope you won't take this the wrong way, but let me stay with it for a minute. I do a radio show during the day, and last week, I cannot tell you how many people called and said, I've never hated anybody in my whole life. I'm 72 years old until now. I have a woman called, I'll never forget, and she said, trust me, I'm a very kind person, but I want Donald Trump to suffer. So do you mean what you say, or are you just trying to be a kind and humane soul? I'm serious.
No, it's a great question, and I'm not laughing because of the question. I'm laughing because I'd like to think I am a kind and humane soul. But as I said, it's been very difficult in the last 4 years not to feel hatred, not to feel revengeful, because look at the damage that's being done. Look at the cruelty that's been enacted towards the most vulnerable people among us. It's incredibly difficult. The reason why I say, of course, isn't because I'm not inclined to want him to suffer. It's because if we allow that, it diminishes us, and that would be a lasting, horrible legacy of Donald J. Trump.
70-plus days until Joe Biden is sworn in, give or take a few. Chuck Todd from Meet the Press was on the radio with us about a week ago and said he believes, based on no information, just his sense of the world, is that Donald Trump's going to resign and say, you don't deserve me, I'm leaving. What do you think Donald Trump does in the next 70 days?
That's really interesting because before the election results came in, I was asked what he would do under what circumstances. And I said that if it was a landslide, he would be forced to spin away from that by claiming the American people don't deserve him. He was the best thing that ever happened to America, and he's going to go off and do something really important like build Trump Tower in Moscow. This is a different situation, however. He's lost, but not by a large enough margin for it to serve as a total repudiation of him. I think the fact that Republicans as a party fared better than he did is also making this worse for him. So I'm not so sanguine about his resigning, because that would be to concede a loss. And I think that would be psychologically, difficult isn't a strong enough word. I don't want to say impossible, but it would be close to impossible for him to do that.
So what does he do? Put together a pardon list of his friends, puts together a firing list of his enemies, sends the kids out to cut deals that he'll be able to benefit from when he leaves the White House in late January. Is that what he does? I mean, what does he do for 2 months when he's stewing away in the Oval Office and on the second floor over there?
Hopefully Donald goes out and plays a lot of golf, because that would be the safest thing for all of us. I've thought for a while that if he lost, he would basically engage in a smash and grab in the next 72 days. What also I imagine he'll do is pardon a lot of people who really shouldn't be pardoned, which will demoralize a lot of us. As we saw with Esper, he will start firing people in key positions, which is very worrisome, but we'll have to see how that plays out. And the thing at the moment I'm most concerned about, although, again, the firing thing, we need to keep our eyes on that, is that he is going to spend the next several weeks undermining the incoming Biden-Harris administration, which will make it harder for them to do the work that needs to be done, not just to start healing the divide, to the extent that that's even possible, but to start a federal COVID response, et cetera, all of these things which need to be done.
You either wrote or were quoted in a piece, I think you wrote it recently, about an issue that has been a major concern of mine for years in the Trump presidency, is the so-called Goldwater rule that the American Psychiatric Association precludes professionals from essentially diagnosing a public figure, even though in the case of your uncle, we probably see more of him than most people like you see of their patients. Obviously, the Trump era is finished, at least for now. Do you think, as a result of the inhibitions that placed on people who maybe could have warned members of Congress or warned the American people what we might be dealing with, that there'll be relaxation of that going forward?
There better be. In my view, it's malpractice. It's, as I wrote in an op-ed recently, the Goldwater rule, as it was originally written, precludes professionals, psychiatrists, from diagnosing a public figure, which is technically impossible anyway, so that's fine. But they expanded the rule in 2017, interestingly enough, so that mental health professionals who are members of the APA can't even speculate about a public figure's mental health, which is beyond absurd. It's dangerous. The American people need to be guided by experts. We have legal experts helping them understand what's going on with the Emoluments Clause or the Hatch Act or the failure to concede. We have medical doctors who walked us through the whole COVID-19 diagnosis that he received. So why is it only that psychiatrists, psychologists, et cetera, are not allowed to provide expertise to the American people?
We only have a minute left. Even if if professionals is not supposed to diagnose a public figure, could you diagnose the 70 million people who voted for him? They know what everybody else knows. Why did they stay loyal to Donald Trump, do you think?
We can explain some of that by the fact that, there's always 22% of any population that is on the extreme end. We have people who are just they belong to a party, they vote along party lines. This, however, is much worse than that. I find it soul-crushing. My guess is that there are a lot of people in this country who are subject to authoritarian personalities, and we need to figure out what to do about that.
How does Joe Biden figure out how to appeal to them?
I think what we're going to see during this transition is Joe Biden acting like a president for all Americans, who is trying from the very beginning to solve problems that need to be solved, while Donald continues to decompensate in the Oval Office, firing people randomly, sending out tweets that are getting flagged for misinformation, and just honestly behaving like somebody who never should have been within a million light years of the White House.
Mary Trump, thanks for having the courage to do what you've done, and I appreciate your time tonight as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. The book again is Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man.